was a couple of days. You came back for a day or two, then you left again.
Yes.
And a lot of news has happened this week.
I know, absolutely.
And the news cycle never stops. Yesterday, it came out that Deshaun Watson's willing to accept an 8-game suspension and a $5 million fine from the NFL. So let's play a game of deal or no deal real quick.
Yeah.
If you're the NFL, and Jay, we'll start with you, then go around the horn. Would you accept this proposed settlement from Deshaun Watson?
No. And I think it makes Deshaun look desperate.
Look weak.
You're talking about a guy who has, all the way up to this point, insisted that he's done nothing wrong. Now he's going to accept an 8-game suspension. I think it's a bad look on Deshaun, and I think that it was just a miscalculation on his team, because I would be floored if the league would take that deal. Just this week, Roger Goodell came out and said, we're seeking a year because the crime deserves at least a year. So why would he cut that in half and add a $5 million fine? I thought it was a bad move by Deshaun.
Bull, do you agree it's too little too late?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, well, I think the league shouldn't have changed the suspension in the first place, as I said. However, if I'm in that league, if I'm pretending to be Roger Goodell, no, this is too little too late. And I agree with Jay. It makes Deshaun Watson look bad, which is probably why the owner's side leaked this out. But because there's no point in Deshaun Watson's side putting this out, because unless the league accepts it, which they probably won't, it makes him look bad.
I think it also came from the owner's side, but for a little different reason. This came from the owners because now they can give a 12-game suspension and a $5 million fine and say, look, this is what Watson wanted. We went above and beyond that without suspending him for the full season.
Right.
Which gives them a little more leeway to say, hey, we may have actually dropped the hammer on a situation when the reality is they wanted a full 17-game suspension, an indefinite suspension, and more than a $5 million fine. And now, just because it's more than what quote-unquote Watson wants, they could look like they've done their due diligence, gave him a harsher penalty than what initially was called for, without going to the maximum extreme here, which is indefinite and a bigger fine.
Well, so first of all, I'm not convinced that came from Watson. I'm not, right? First, let's be clear here. What's going on here? There's a masterful game being played here by the NFL. It's masterful, right? It really is. I mean, Watson getting played at every angle because he doesn't understand the parameters of the game, right? There's a disinformation campaign going on out here, and it's bearing him out here in the public opinion every day, right? So why would I offer an 8-game suspension and $5 million? Because you're already at the mat. You're going to the mat here, right? They've already laid this down. So why would I come back? Because it'll make me look like I'm weak, right? There is a game being played here that is on such a higher level. And I've said it all week. And Bull, you haven't been here, but I've said it all week. He and his team don't even know what's going on here. Well, this is so far beyond the Watson thing so far, right? The Watson case itself. It's about beyond his years, sending messages to the other rank and file, sending messages to the Browns as well. They're sending a message to the Browns like, get outside of the pocket here. We're going to bury you too, right? So this is going to a place where I'm not even sure he's even aware how to combat it. But be clear, there's a way to combat it.
Well, whose fault is that, though?
Well, that's his fault because he doesn't know, right? And the people around him obviously don't know. Rusty Hardin is a criminal attorney, correct?
Correct.
All right. He did his job in Houston, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Rusty's gone. You're out.
Yeah.
Now we're on to the next group. Because there's two waves here. There's a PR public relations campaign that's being waged against him as well, right? And then there's another legal side of it because you've got this labor law case that's going on here. So Rusty Hardin is not the labor lawyer. So Rusty's done. And the PR campaign, he has nobody that is at least pushing back to keep the playing field level so you can get a fair assertion of what actually happened here, right? Everything you see out of everybody in the paper now is being basically taken from the Sue Robinson report, and now it's become de facto fact, right? And it's not de facto fact. It is an assumption of the evidence presented to her, and she gave you out of preponderance of evidence what she thought. Now that is to be counterbalanced by what the grand juries in Texas thought, right? But nobody brings up Texas. Nobody says a thing about Texas.
Yeah.
And we talk about Texas, they don't even mention the Texans in here, right? So you're going to pound Watson, but you're not going to pound the Texans. Right? There's a whole bunch being played here, right? And it's being masterfully orchestrated by the league office. Be clear to that.
I've heard a few people say that they're trying to send a message so nobody else does this again. That's stupid, because if you're going to do predatory behavior, which is what he's being accused of, right?
Those were exactly Goodell's words,
right.
just so we're clear.
So, like, you're obviously in that moment when the next player wants to do, maybe not wants to is the right word, but does something of this nature. Are they going to stop to think, well, if I do this and get caught, then I'm going to get suspended? No, this is not stopping anybody from doing anything. This is once again, so like the league has always made decisions based on emotion and PR. And now they're back to that again, which ultimately they run the league, so technically they can do whatever they want. Now, and this process was negotiated with the players, why they agreed to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess they, you never think you're going to get in trouble, whatever it may be. But I just think everybody's talking so much about the number of potential victims here. And the bottom line is, even if it is true what she wrote, right?
Yeah.
Let's say it's true.
Okay.
I still think there's a huge difference between, like, we've gotten to the point now where any accusation of any sexual nature is all treated as equal.
This is where
and then
we're
the
at.
only thing that makes a difference is the number. And that's not true. No, I don't think there's many people trying to argue that Deshaun Watson is completely innocent here.
No.
He crossed the line.
Yes.
I think that's very likely clear here. To me, it is. However, there's a big difference between being accused of rape and being accused of taking out your penis and trying to get a happy ending and not forcing it on somebody. I know it's pointed language, but it's true.
Well, here,
it doesn't mean it's not wrong, but it's not as wrong as some of the. There's levels to this thing. So just because there's a lot of numbers and he should be suspended and he's done something wrong, it doesn't. This is not worse than beating a woman. This is not worse than the accusation of rape. I don't understand how the commissioner says this is the worst thing that's ever happened. To me, that doesn't make any sense.
Jay, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah.
Here.
I was listening intently to Bull. He makes a lot of good points. I don't know what that. You're right. There are levels to this thing. The whole reason that we're here discussing this for months is because the league hasn't yet figured out how to dole out punishment on these different levels. So they have this huge basket of 6 games, and that seems to be the cap. And by the way, the one thing that has bothered me throughout all this is the language that this is behavior that this is like the worst behavior the league has ever seen. That's a little troublesome to me, only because Aaron Hernandez killed a guy while he was a member of the National Football League.
Right.
And somehow
Yeah.
I think we glossed over that.
Yeah.
And certainly he was punished for that, of course. But let's stop that nonsense of this is the worst behavior that the league has ever seen. I can juxtapose these allegations to the videotape that I saw of Ray Rice. In my mind, I quantify Ray Rice's behavior as worse. So I don't think that we need to say, well, this is the worst behavior that the league has ever seen, therefore it should be the stiffest punishment that the league ever hands out. I just think that's dead wrong from jump. And I don't want to get too far off track, guys, because the question initially to start the show from McNuggets was, do you think this was a good idea to offer 8 games? I think we're all in agreement here. I think it makes him look weak. I do like the move that the Browns made a couple of days ago to announce that they intend to start Deshaun Watson. I thought was a brilliant move because it's the next chess move to the NFL. Yeah. And the reason I say that is I don't think Deshaun Watson touches the field tonight in Jacksonville. I don't. I could be wrong. It's just my opinion. My gut tells me that sometime between now and kickoff, the league is going to come out and say that Deshaun Watson has been indefinitely suspended. They do not want the image of Deshaun Watson running around on the football field creating highlights. That's the absolute last thing that the league wants. And I said this yesterday, and I've maintained this for years. Roger Goodell is a man who is used to getting exactly what he wants. And I think in this case, he wants to make sure that there are no video highlights of number 4 running around the field with a smile on his face. That's a bad optics for the league. I don't think we're going to get to that point, and I think he's going to have his buddy come out with the indefinite suspension before game time. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. I'll be surprised if I am.
So let me say, Jay, I think you're 100% spot on. It comes down to a couple things to me, right? Goodell wants his way, and I agree with you. I don't think Deshaun Watson hits the floor today, right? Because it just undermines exactly where they want to go. And the Browns move the other day was another move in the chess game. So they say something, and the Browns immediately come back and say, well, guess what? He's starting on Friday, right? That forces the next hand to say, okay, well, you starting him on Friday, right? Which means now that I have to suspend him before Friday because the league's going to say, if this occurs, the league is sending a message to the Browns, no, I'm going to teach you. I'm running this and you not, right? So the next move is Watson. That's why I don't believe this thing about the 8 games and the $5 million. This thing is headed one way. Either you succumb to the wishes of the NFL, that's Watson, or you say, screw it. We come this far, we're going all the way. Because the one thing I will just say is this, and I've said this from the beginning. You want the answer to the equation, answer to the question at the beginning of the equation, right? They have not concluded it because you cannot discount the 2 grand juries in Texas. You cannot do it, right? So he is not liable criminally for anything, but you're charging for everything, right? And then your collective bargaining is so broad that it has really no definition of what the thing, and now you start throwing out words like egregious, predatory, the worst thing I've ever seen before. Yeah. You set the table. And the thing I've been railing against is this, and I'm not advocating for Watson. I'm advocating for the process of fairness. Watson has nobody that is pushing back to the narrative that's being created on the street. So now every time I turn on any talk show radio, read anything in print, it's like a foregone conclusion that this is what occurred, right? And I was like, well, who's pushing back on this, right? And so I'm not one of belief that he put the story out there, but I am one of the belief that I'm in agreement with Jay. I'd be surprised if he gets to run around in a 4 jersey today in Jacksonville.
Well, yeah. It is worth pointing out, though, that the criminal grand jury in Texas and the NFL's personal conduct policy are not apples to apples. Like you
don't have to be. You talk about labor law.
I'm just saying you could not be charged criminally, but also still violate the NFL player policy.
We're moved off the criminal piece. We're talking about labor law. So in labor law, the basic laws of this are that if I'm a collective bargaining agreement, if you want to change the labor law, if you want to change the rules of agreement, you have to give me proper notice first that you intend to do something.
Totally agree
with that. That did not occur.
I totally agree with that.
So
no.
that did not occur. So now we create the atmosphere of disparate treatment. That is obvious to anybody in this business knows what is going on here. And the NFL is trying to blow by the rules and regulations of basic labor law relations in this country. They are.
Hey, Brad.
Right? Yes.
If I can interject just one thing, I agree with that. But here's where the union and Watson are in serious trouble. Because that same agreement that you're alluding to also gives the commissioner the power to supersede the disciplinary officer in Sue L. Robinson and the punishment that she handed out. So on one hand, you're right. You can't change the rules in the middle of the game, but those same rules in this agreement, and this is what makes the players union look horrible.
Yeah.
The players union agreed in this collectively bargained agreement that after Sue L. Robinson issued her decision, Roger Goodell then had the right to appeal and either hear that appeal himself or to appoint a designee who will hear that case. And that's where we are.
And I'm not arguing that,
So
Jay.
once he makes his ruling, the union is going to have to go to federal court because they have no ground to stand on based on their own CBA.
Well, Jay,
they gave this power away.
Jay, I'm not disagreeing with that in any bit, right? I'm not arguing that he didn't have the right because they agreed to the terms here. What I'm arguing is this. There is a notice requirement required. There is a disparate treatment situation that has to be addressed. And the disparate treatment comes in. You take care of Watson, but you don't take care of the Texans.
I'm fully with you on that. That's a joke.
Those are the only two things they can argue here.
Or Washington.
Yes.
New England.
I'm not arguing the CBA here because that ship has sailed. They sailed it on themselves.
Federal court.
Yep, they sailed that on themselves. Right.
And that disagreement is for a federal court. And I couldn't agree with you more, Brad. I think that what the union and Deshaun Watson are facing now is to sit back and take whatever punishment the league throws at it, and then their only recourse is to go to federal court and to file a lawsuit for, as you say, the disparate treatment, because it's clearly two systems of justice here. When is the investigation on the Texans open? How long is that investigation going to happen? What kind of punishment are the Texans facing? They wrote 30 checks. They were complicit in Deshaun Watson's behavior. So they can't skirt and get absolutely no punishment from this whole thing. So I think where we're going is federal court. And here's the bad thing about that. And I think it was you, Brad, that said this earlier this week, and I agree with it. The reason the NFL is undefeated in federal court is because the federal court always says to the union, hey, you guys agreed to this.
Yeah.
And that's where our discussion from 2 days ago, which I'll go back to now, that's why it's so important that in the next CBA, and the league has to live with this for 7 more years, 7+, but in the next CBA, it absolutely is imperative, if this is a big enough hill for the union to die on, that they take those powers back from the commissioner, because this is a kangaroo court. This is not fair justice. It just isn't. When one of the parties gets to decide an appeal, that's a joke. And that's what this is. And the league took advantage of the union. We are where we are because the union got played.
Yep.
And they got to live with it for 7+ more years. And unfortunately, so does Deshaun Watson.
And I hear I see you added your other Emmy back there too. I see that now. Right? So you got 2 back here now. Look on your other shoulder.
I actually didn't. that was there yesterday too.
All right. So I tell you this, right? And the union screwed themselves, right? So I can't even I can't sit here and argue what you agreed to out of idiocy, right? That's for the rank and file to take up with their leadership there, right?
You're right.
The one thing we can argue is the disparate treatment and the notice issue. And the thing is, Watson had to know that. Somebody should have told him that either we cut a deal before this hearing is done with Sue L. Robinson, or we got to go all the way here. There's going to be no in between. And for some reason, in the ethos, people think that the NFL had kind of given the Watson crew probably or the Browns an eyeball that we may be willing to live with this until. And I think everything got overturned when the heat started coming on the NFL, right? And I think the game has changed there. So Watson has to know, his team should know, you're in the midst of it. They're cutting no deal with you. There's no deal
at this point.
At this point, because now I have to send you a lesson, right? Because the other rank and file members here, I want to send them a lesson. And I'm going to send it right through you. And so the only way you're going to have to do it is you have to go the long route here. So I don't know, is he got somebody ready in Delaware to file a TRO today?
I got to believe if the NFL thought they had any chance at all, and they could be wrong, but if they thought they had any chance of all losing in court, why would they be going through this? Why would they put themselves
they've never
through
lost.
This? They've never lost, so they have no reason to believe. By the way, one other thing. I am so sick of fellow media members, both locally and nationally, trying to tell me and the fans and other media members that want to see Deshaun Watson play that we're bad or, well, don't you care about women? Yeah, I don't have to prove myself whether I care about women or not. My record speaks for itself. But get off your high horse. There's bad guys on every team. I had some idiot who's a Bengals fan, of which I am as well, and said, oh, I would never root for a team that had a guy like Deshaun Watson. And really? Joe Mixon, Pac-Man Jones? I could go on and on. Every team has some bad guys, okay? If they're allowed to play, which he will be eventually,
at some point,
and he has a chance to make my team better, I'm going to take him. We got bad guys in every walk of life. What am I going to do? I can't go into any stores. I can't buy any clothes because they're made by kids in Bangladesh. I can't do anything anymore. You got to all pick and choose where your line is. If your line is to not watch the Browns because of Watson, good for you. Stop telling me I have to draw the same line.
Well, that brings us right to our next point here, Bull, is there are 52 other guys on this roster.
Right.
Yes.
Now there's more because it's a preseason, but when the season comes down, there'll be 52 other guys. And this Watson saga and any outside distraction takes a toll on not only their mental preparation for games, but on their mental wellness. And Brad, you've been in situations in your career where there's been outside distractions. How much of a toll do you think this Watson saga is having on the other 52 guys and coaching staff for the Browns?
Well, I'm sure they would be rather dealing with other things, but let me just tell you, it really is the temperature's taken from the person who's getting the heat. Because most players, professional players, have a theory, right? And the theory is, let me stay out of your locker because I don't know what the hell going on in your locker. I'm going to just mind my own business. And that's how they want to keep it, right? Now, if you're on a team where somebody's under serious duress and heat, right, it can become problematic if that person starts to melt down. So I don't know how Watson's temperature is, right, but he catches it from all angles. Now, if he looks like he's melting, it's going to melt down to the other people. Now, if it looks like he's not melting down, right, and that he's going on about a professional posture, then it shields the rest, right? And I'll give you a case in point. When Kobe Bryant was under duress for the case in Colorado, he was flying back from Colorado to Laker playoff games. He sure was. And
Dropping
performed.
50.
Yep. Played hard. So that shielded the other guys because the stance he took was like, I didn't do it, right? Didn't do it. And I'm going to handle that, right? And so they just took their posture. Now, if it looks like you're succumbing to it and everything else, it can become problematic because the first question you're going to get asked here from anyone is this. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Myles Garrett, what do you think about that? Chubb.
Yeah.
Not how many yards you have. What do you think about that? Chubb.
Right.
And it could just wear you down.
Well, Jason Lloyd was in Bull's chair yesterday and said that Watson had been handling this situation mentally from a flawless standpoint until he got news that the NFL was appealing his suspension while he was signing autographs, and it was the first time he said he had heard that Watson looked drained and deflated a little bit. And Jay, you mentioned you talked to Jimmy Donovan, who's been out at camp, and that kind of seemed to be right in line with what he said. Is that correct?
You're dead on, and first of all, I want to say it's moments like this that our show and our viewers are so lucky that we have a guy like Brad on our panel, because Brad, I don't think you could have more eloquently stated exactly what goes on in a professional locker room. And using the Kobe Bryant example is absolutely spot on. He handled his business. He was flying back and forth between Colorado and Los Angeles and coming home and dropping 50. And you could see the other Lakers looking around like, there must be nothing to see here.
Exactly.
And I do think this was Jimmy's point earlier this week. Jimmy said that the mood in camp was relatively positive throughout the entire camp until word came that the league was going to appeal. He said in that moment, it almost felt like someone just let the air out of the room. And you could feel that there was a deflation going on with the team morale. And I think a microcosm of that is exactly what Jason said, that Deshaun was signing autographs when one of the fans said, hey, Deshaun, the league just decided that they're going to appeal. And Jason said that his physical energy took a quick turn down. Well, if Jason saw that and the fans saw that, his teammates see that too. And my fear is, and there's a saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? My fear that when the story is written for the 2022 Cleveland Browns, that it's going to be a situation where this Deshaun Watson thing took on a life of its own. And ultimately, once the team is finally made aware of what their situation will be, and I think that's coming very, very soon, my fear is that everybody in that locker room is going to look around and say, we're screwed. Our guy's gone. We know what the situation is now. And so often in the NFL, that first 3 or 4 weeks, that first quarter of the season really sets the tone for the entire year. And everybody knows when you get off to a bad start, it's really hard to overcome that.
Yeah.
And my fear is that there is going to be a lot of negative energy if this decision comes out in an unfavorable way for the Browns. And the whole thing is going to spiral out of control. And it won't matter if Jimmy G is the quarterback. It won't matter if Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback. If it's anybody other than number 4, my fear for a length of time, my fear is this thing's going to go sideways in a hurry. I hope I'm wrong. I'm a diehard Browns fan. I'm done with the losing. I want to see this team make a long playoff run. My fear is if they're dealt this hand that I believe is coming, everybody's going to kind of look around. And I know it's a next man up mentality, and you can say that. But when your next man is replacing the man, it's not always just a next man up mentality.
There's a lot of different angles of this, Jay. First of all, to your point on that last part, that's coaching, right? I mean, the coach cannot allow, that's coaching and leadership on this team, which is part coaching and part the other leaders. You can't, obviously, if Deshaun Watson is out for the whole season, it changes. You're human. The fans are going to think differently about the year, and the players will think differently. They could say what they want about next man up, but you're right. You can't replace Deshaun Watson with Jacoby Brissett or Jimmy Garoppolo, not for an entire season. What you're saying about Kobe, obviously, that's great insight that we can't get anywhere else. The only thing I would say that's a big difference is that the Lakers weren't worried, at least at that point, about Kobe not playing. The league wasn't trying to stop him from playing. In this case, the league is trying to stop Deshaun Watson from playing, and the team has this hanging over their heads. There's no way it can't, even if he was perfect, which would help. But even beyond that, knowing that you're not going to know if you're going to have your most important player, there's no debate. If the Lakers players were worried, is Kobe going to show up today? I mean, that would have to affect them. And it's the same thing here. Even if it was an injury, I guess to some degree, the same thing. Like Watson gives you a chance to win. The other guys don't. I don't think they can win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think they can make the playoffs with Jacoby Brissett, not for a whole season. So it certainly changes how we're going to feel about the team, and there's no doubt it's got to affect the players.
So let me say that the Lakers were worried about Kobe Bryant showing up at the games because he was in a criminal proceeding, not knowing how long that was going to take, how long was he going to be able to get back. So they were worried, was he going to show or not.
Yeah.
The thing I will tell you, though, it is, and I'll just say this, and again, you are where you are, right? The decisions that you've made here, I'm sure the Browns were clued in to some factor what position Watson was going to take, right? So at some point here, you're riding the coattails of whatever decision he needs to go. The players, the other players, are looking for, can I term it, some to be propped up in the back, right? You know, the one thing Kobe Bryant was adamant about, that he did not do what he was being accused of. And he stood fast with that, right? The other players feed off of that, right? Like, all right, he said he didn't do it. So when Jay comes in and talks about he dropped 50, well, I guess he didn't do it because he feel like he didn't do it. So I'm going to go here and drop 50 on you, right? So now Watson is going swimmingly well, right? Jay out at camp. Everything looks good, signing autographs, everything's going smoothly. He gets the 6-game suspension from Sue L. Robinson, right? Everything goes well. And then they drop the bomb on us like a pin being in a balloon. The air just started being sucked out of here, right? And so the teammates now are looking to see how you react to that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if you look like you're being deflated by that, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Right? So I would tell you that the one thing I said, Deshaun Watson is 26. 26 years old. He's just young. Can you imagine what it's like to have this heat on you every day, 24 hours a day, for the length of time it's been on you? It's got to be draining to you. Mm-hmm. It has to be draining.
It's draining to us as fans.
So, so if you're in the midst of it, it has to be draining to you, right? So the one thing that he cannot do is waver. He cannot waver. But who props him up? The team you have around you props you up. I'm not just talking about his teammates. His internal team that is supporting him during this entire process have to keep him uplifted, right? Because you're working through the environment. You're working through the system now. The system has many ebbs and flows to the ups and downs. Somebody has to say, hey, here's the game. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Because somebody there has to say that we did not do this. I don't care what you say. We didn't do that, and that's what he has to grab onto because his teammates are looking for some assurance. Because you think they don't go home and people are asking them like, "Damn, you playing with this dude? I mean, this dude did everything." And you have to have the belief that the person you're with, that you're crawling next to in that trench, is the person that you think he is, right? Because if you don't, that's a whole nother game.
Here's the one thing about the Kobe Watson comparison. I would say with the Kobe situation, they knew he was going to play if he was able to get back in time.
It was able to get
Right.
back.
He was able to get back in time.
The
The league wasn't trying to stop
Yeah.
him, and that gave the Lakers and his teammates at least a glimmer of hope that, hey, if Kobe will be back, Kobe's playing tonight. With the Browns, they hope Watson will play this year. They have no clue because we have no clue. Watson has no clue, and the only person who knows is Peter C. Harvey and whatever he decides. And I think with the lack of hope at the end, the lack of the light at the end of the tunnel for his teammates to kind of latch onto and say, hey, we just need to make it 8 games. We need to make it 10 games. It is extremely hard to keep that
And you know what,
morale as high as it should be.
You know what's the weird thing is that for a while when the case was with Sue Robinson, we were all saying 6 games is a win. 6 games is a win. Maybe even 8's a win. Now, I'd sign for 12 games right now just to get him
Bull.
at some point in the season. Yeah.
That's a great point. I'm glad you made it. Somebody that I've spoken with in the last week who covers the league, and he's been very involved in covering this story, made that point exactly. The point that was made was when the league first heard that it was going to be 6 games, and they licked their finger and they put it in the air and they said, okay, now let's see what the reaction to this is. One of the things that they believe resonated with the league was the fact that the Browns and the Browns fan base, and by all accounts, everybody involved in this situation on the Browns side was actually looking at this saying, whew, that's a win for us.
Yeah.
We dodged a
True.
bullet.
Yeah.
So when the league's doing its mental gymnastics, how is this being perceived? I think one of the things was that they used to equate into this whole process was, well, the team and everybody in their camp thinks that he got off easy. So we can't have that. And so here's what I believe is going to happen. I believe that by kickoff today, Peter C. Harvey is either going to say it's an indefinite suspension or, and we've talked about this many times, perhaps the best decision is the one that neither side is thrilled with, but also both sides could live with. And here's what I believe that number is, guys. I believe it's 12 games. It's not the full 17 and perhaps even more that Goodell has now publicly stated on record he's looking for. And it's also more than the 6 that everybody in the Browns camp kind of said, whew, we dodged a bullet.
Right.
So you're kind of splitting the difference. You're setting it at 12 games. And I also think there's going to be a much bigger financial punishment that goes along with this. Is it a $5 million fine? Is it a $10 million fine? I don't know. But if I had to make a guess right now, could easily be wrong because we're all just guessing. That's all we're doing.
Sure.
I would say that it would be 12 games, $10 million, gavel is slammed, and I think at that point, maybe Deshaun and the NFLPA say, we're good with this, let's just play football.
Jay, that would have
And
to be that deal would have to be cut before tonight. Because
it's not a deal. I'm not saying a deal. I'm saying that's what Peter C. Harvey is going to issue. That's my guess.
You think he's going to issue the 12-game kicker? You think that's what's going on?
Well, the reason I say that is because, again, remember, I think the right decision here is the one that neither side is thrilled with, but both sides could live with. And I believe that I think that fits the bill here. Either 10 or 12 games kind of fits the rule.
Okay.
And I don't think either side is going to be doing backflips over that ruling. But I also think that both sides would say at the end of the day, that's judicious and fair, and it kind of splits the extremes that both camps were kind of looking at. So if it's 10 or if it's 12, here's what has to happen. This is why I think it's going to happen before kickoff today. It's past damn time everybody knows.
Yeah.
There's no new evidence coming to light. Peter C. Harvey has had all of these briefs. He's had the case. He knows what this is. He knows what's going on. Make a damn decision so we can stop talking about this absolute nonsense because football has started. Games are underway. And every player in the league is having to pay an unfair price because we're not talking about football. We're talking about Deshaun Watson, and it's high time this thing ends.
If it is 12 games, in my personal opinion, that is the worst case scenario for the Browns because I think it sabotages this season. And even though it gets Watson back on the field by that point, 12 games in, I'm not sure they'll be able to stay afloat with Jacoby Brissett, which brings us to our next topic, which is what Mary Kay reported yesterday, that if Watson's suspension gets extended past 6 games, the Browns, as they always would do, will be interested in some other quarterback options, including one Jimmy G.